Well, here he is, folks, our great leader. It's fascinating listening to people trying to excuse his behaviour and that of his close Labour allies. You can almost see the mental gymnastics that they use to try and excuse him. So whilst things have got worse for us, they certainly got better for Keir and his greedy clan. Absolutely disgraceful and utter hypocrite.
Starmer has been hiding a nasty little secret that completely ruins his credibility. Nana Akua not only exposes him for being a hypocrite, but also demolishes him with her scathing remarks. Despite the media's best efforts to hide the truth from the public, the shocking secret is coming out, and it looks like the end of the road for Starmer. He's been pretending to be this all-good saint and bashing everyone else, but the truth is out, and turns out that he's worse than anyone could have imagined.
There he was, pontificating on high about Tory sleaze, Keir Starmer.
As ever, one rule for them, another rule for everybody else. A new Britain built on decency, security, prosperity and respect is welcome in my Labour Party.
Sir Keir, always on his two-tier high horse, he uses incredibly harsh words, but what good are they if he's just a hypocrite? Nana shows the true nature of Starmer for the entire world to see. As the leader of the opposition, Starmer talked a big game, insulting and bashing the Tory prime ministers. However, now in power, he's taken a complete U-turn. Or maybe he was like this from the start and was just pretending to be the good guy. The way he talked about them is how he should talk about himself as well.
Even now, as the latest mealy-mouthed apology stumbles out of one side of his mouth, a new set of deflections and distortions pour from the other. But the damage is already done. The public have made up their mind. They don't believe a word the Prime Minister says. They know what he is.
Watching Starmer talk about empty apologies is quite rich. These days, he's the one who should be apologizing for making our lives miserable, but he doesn't even have the decency to do that. Deflections and distortions are Starmer's speciality. He's been doing that ever since he became the Prime Minister. What's troubling is the secret he's been hiding for so long. Starmer isn't as straightforward or honest as you might think.
And now we learn that Sir Keir Starmer has declared more gifts and freebies than any other MP. And yes, that includes more than Boris Johnson. Keir's total in gifts, benefits and hospitality since 2009 topping £150,000. Here he is justifying why he needs to be in a box at his beloved Arsenal.
I've had season tickets at Arsenal for a long time now, up in the stands, where I've gone with my boy and my friends for year after year after year.
For a member of the parliament to accept freebies from the rich elites is concerning. What does he offer them in return? The evidence suggests that Starmer's being controlled and he gets paid incredibly well for it. While living the lavish life, he panders to us about having to raise taxes. The audacity of that is astonishing on its own. If he really cared about us, he'd take the painfully obvious steps that we're asking him to. Think about it, we've all heard the £22 billion black hole story a million times now. And all of this was happening while Starmer was accepting free passes and whole boxes for football matches. If the leader of the Labour Party is doing this, you can only imagine what the rest of them are up to.
But Keir wants us to believe that he's doing this because he cares about the taxpayer. Please! If you cared about us, Keir, you'd backtrack on your ridiculously damaging policies. I mean, this has got to be the most uncaring government I have ever had the misfortune to be led by. And they've only been in power for just 10 weeks. They've only just started.
Within months of taking office, Starmer has passed at least a dozen horrible policies that have burdened the taxpayers beyond their means. If you care about us, maybe reverse them, Sir Keir. The truth is, he's just getting started. Things are bound to keep getting worse while Starmer enjoys his freebies. You won't believe the things he has gotten as gifts while the rest of us are struggling to make ends meet. It's not just Starmer either. The entire Labour Party is rotten.
And school children with the VAT raid, whilst accepting gifts. But they're all at it. Angela Rayner, who accepted £3.5 grand's worth of clothing. Rachel Reeves, our Chancellor, who accepted £7,500 free clothes. Perhaps she could donate them to pensioners to keep them warm. David Lammy, accepting £10,000. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Pensioners are freezing, private schools are being hammered, farmers are suffering, companies can't afford to employ you anymore. And meanwhile, Labour ministers are making a fortune. Can they not afford their own clothes? They're paid exceptionally well and have enough assets to make your eyes water. Yet, despite all this, they accept gifts from wealthy individuals in return for favors, no doubt. And this secret is nothing new. Labour has been a puppet for a very long time. That explains why pretty much everything is bought for Starmer by these mystery funders.
He accepted free clothes for his wife. In what kind of man allows another man to buy his wife clothes? And he accepted £2.5 grand worth of spectacles, whilst earning £167,000 as a Prime Minister, and is rumoured to have a property portfolio worth millions. Well, that's way more than most. Surely the Starmers can also afford to buy their own clothes.
Starmer is rich, and there's no denying that fact. He makes an impressive salary, better than most of us do, and on top of that, he's a millionaire. So why are other people gifting clothes to him and his wife? This whole equation doesn't even account for his pension. Starmer thinks he is so special that there's a unique rule in place only for him.
With a pension so gold-plated that the House of Commons legislated for it individually. There was a statutory instrument laid during the coalition years entitled the Pension of Mr. Keir Starmer. I mean, that's how much cash this guy has, and yet he's accepting gifts.
That's right, there's individual legislation in place under his name and he enjoys the benefits of it. Sure, that is a legal procedure, but that only goes to show that Starmer has a very decent cash flow. So if he's still receiving gifts of insane value, then there's an obvious conclusion. He's giving people special favors in return, and it's not something new. In fact, we've already seen it happen before, weeks after he became the Prime Minister. Of course, you're not allowed to point any of this out, and if you do, the media will try to throw dirt at you in an attempt to discredit you. A literal smear campaign.
Some were so angry with Boris over Watergate, Wallpapergate, Partygate, Animalgate, to even question the integrity of Sir Keir Starmer. And those of us who did were seen as far right. Well, here he is, folks, our great leader. It's fascinating listening to people trying to excuse his behaviour and that of his close Labour allies. You can almost see the mental gymnastics that they use to try and excuse him. So whilst things have got worse for us, they certainly got better for Keir and his greedy clan. Absolutely disgraceful and utter hypocrite.
Anyone who disagrees or criticizes Starmer is a far-right extremist according to the Labour Party. Since most of the media has become a mouthpiece for them, that's what you see repeated over and over again. Starmer was right to question the integrity of previous Prime Ministers, but he should not be above scrutiny, especially since Nana has exposed him to be the most rotten one of them all. No other Prime Minister has taken this many freebies, and that's saying something.
And there seems to be no one there who just says, look, Prime Minister, don't do this for your own sake. We know you're not cheating or thieving or anything, but don't do it. And this is what baffles me, is just the lack of judgment.
So he hasn't got a moral compass of his own. He needs somebody else to tell him that don't accept free... I don't think he should be accepting free Taylor Swift tickets. I don't think he should be accepting free tickets for Arsenal at all.
You can tell that the entire Labour Party is part of the problem, since none of them try to stop it either. Not one of Starmer's advisors told him that it'd be a horrible idea to be such a huge hypocrite. The bigger problem is, why should he even need advisors to tell him that? Surely our Prime Minister has a moral compass of his own to know the difference between right and wrong. Starmer has betrayed his own morals by doing so, but who is pulling his strings? The answer is more obvious than you think.
The problem for Sir Keir Starmer is the problem the Labour Party has always had. The unions are in charge. Before the election, Labour convinced the electorate that things could only get better. Remember Rishi Sunak standing in the rain? Oh, an image I'm sure must haunt him. Dee Ream's Things Can Only Get Better in the background. Tony Blair's campaign track in 1997. When Labour actually got into office, it became things would only get better, would get worse before they got better, and that those with the broadest shoulders will carry the heaviest burden.
The unions run the show, and it's been that way for a while. Is that a problem for Starmer, or does he actually prefer it? Labour won the election on one single promise, that they will make things better. The moment they did win, Starmer threw us all under the bus and shifted the goalpost to things will get worse before they get better. And now, we're only seeing things getting worse and worse, and Starmer's breaking all his promises left and right.
10 million pensioners will lose up to £300, and that includes those with an income of just 13,000k. So far, Keir Starmer, the Labour Party, have given out bumper pay rises, capitulating to the unions, claiming ending strikes would get the country moving again, Transport Secretary Louise Haigh approved a 14.25% pay deal for train drivers over 3 years without any concessions on reforming and modernising the system. She just handed out the cash.
Working class people continue to suffer while the trade unions that are so cozy with Starmer keep securing juicy pay deals. Old pensioners can freeze since Starmer only cares for getting more gifts. Things get uglier when you focus on the details of these deals. These unions did not promise any productivity improvements, and pays that they secured are truly outrageous considering the inflation we're facing. He has started off a vicious cycle, and it's only going to make things worse.
Junior doctors were offered a rise of 22% on average over 2 years, inadvertently incentivising other trade unions to make demands too. Who's next? While salaries in these industries may not have kept up with inflation, nobody's salary has kept up with inflation. Inflation was in double figures. In the private sector, you'd be told to take a running jump making those sort of demands.
One union demands something, and Starmer happily obliges in return for some gifts. Soon, more unions will keep demanding more till their every demand is met, even if it's unreasonable or nonsensical. Compare that to the private sector. What are those companies going to do when Starmer keeps hammering them with taxes and regulations? There's a very obvious conclusion to that story, and it's something none of us will like. Sadly, Nana has exposed Starmer, and the trade unions didn't appreciate it, so Starmer might be facing a huge betrayal very soon.
Yeah. I mean, listen, they keep banging on about a black hole. Well, let's be clear. Part of that black hole funding gap is due to the very generous settlements that they've given to the unions. The unions are major donors to the Labour Party, and that is, of course, how the party began. So it should come as no surprise that
The economy is in dire straits according to Starmer and Rachel Reeves. But instead of doing anything to fix it, they're taking care of their biggest donors. At this point, it might be plausible that the trade unions own the Labour government because nothing else makes sense. We're seeing pay increase deals and worker rights laws, the extent of which is not good for growth and stability of our economy.
the unions are turning on Sir Keir Starmer. 3 trade unions, in fact, Unite, USDOR and the PCS, that's the union that represents civil servants, are calling for Labour to change course. They're demanding that Keir restores the winter fuel allowance for all pensioners. Ms Heathcote, the most senior figure of the PCS, said, "We deal first-hand with pensioners in receipt of winter fuel payments. We know how much they rely on them. If you take those payments away, people will have to make really hard decisions about heating their homes and eating." Exactly. And in PMQs, Rishi Sunak accused Sir Keir Starmer of choosing well-paid rail staff while stripping the winter fuel allowance from pensioners.
Mr. Speaker, government is about making choices, and the new Prime Minister has made a choice. He has chosen to take the winter fuel allowance away from low-income pensioners.
Some of the unions have already turned on Starmer, and the support is dwindling. Why did he ever think that axing the winter fuel allowance was a good idea? Nobody will let him live that down, and it might end up causing the downfall of this government. Labour supporters try to deny this with all their might, but Nana quickly debunks their nonsensical arguments.
The reason I ask who's in charge of the Labour Party is because the first thing they did was give the unions, stop all the strikes and give a load of money to the unions, and other unions are now thinking about striking, and hopefully they're hoping to get more money. But then now the unions have come out and said, "Look, Keir Starmer, we're not supporting this." So I'm glad they've come out for this.
Yeah.
But it does show you that the Labour Party, whilst he might have a 158-seat majority, those unions have a lot of power. You say they don't, it's a small amount of money, but, that they contribute, but they have a lot of power.
Arguing that the unions pay a very small amount of donations doesn't cut it. It's clearly visible that they have a lot of power over Starmer if they're able to get such huge pay rises while promising nothing in return. These unions go to strike pretty much regularly, and Starmer bends the knee to their every demand. It's well known that Starmer gets some pricey gifts, but what favours do his benevolent donors get in return?
Keir Starmer has admitted that Lord Ali gave him £32,000 to pay for clothing, double what was declared for that specific purpose. So, on top of the $16,200, Keir received $10,000 in clothing donations in October last year and $6,000 in February this year, which he did not declare as clothing, rather as money for his private office.
Starmer has been busy using Lord Ali as a personal ATM service, and it's not for free. Nana has completely destroyed his reputation and made people question his integrity. Taking gifts like these that amount to such a huge value is concerning for a Prime Minister to do. What makes this blatant act of hypocrisy so much worse is how this happened while they were crying about cronyism and getting special favors from the elites. Is it okay if Starmer and the gang do it?
He claimed that it was to protect his son, who was doing his exams, from the press and journalists who were apparently hovering around outside his home. Only the timings were wrong, so that didn't make any sense. So after all the pontificating and the trade of abuse that Boris Johnson and the Tories received from the opposition at the time, that many on the Labour at the front benches had their snouts firmly in the Lord Ali trough.
Starmer's excuse for using Lord Ali's private office is a horrible attempt at a cover-up. It was confirmed that when he rented out the office, there were no GCSE exams going on. Isn't that shameful that the Labour leader got caught lying publicly? Starmer's been exposed and all his secrets are out. When called out over it, Starmer manages to make it look even worse. You can see that he knows he's guilty.
Do you see how it looks to some people that there's one rule for you in terms of being able to claim this stuff that other people don't have access to?
Well, I think that's why the rules are there to declare it. But look, every day...
Do you get it, though?
Every day...
Do you get how it looks?
Hypocrisy at its finest. Starmer gets to do whatever he wants, no matter how much he bashes the other party for doing the same. He tries to excuse it by saying that he's just a parent who wants the best for his child, but so do the rest of us. Why does Starmer get to enjoy special treatment? There's a larger point at play here too that makes the situation much worse.
I think that a lot of people, because it feels as though the narrative is, well, as long as I've declared it, then it's okay. It's not really okay, is it? Especially when you're taking winter fuel payments, you're saying that there's a black hole that we're all, that the Labour Party are literally throwing themselves into. But you're talking about a black hole and saying how this is terrible and how things are going to get worse before they get better. And then you seem to have your snout in the trough to tunes of hundreds of thousands of pounds. They're all at it.
Do we live in a democracy or Starmer's personal dictatorship where he gets to decide what's okay and what's not? Just publicly declaring the gifts he received doesn't make it right. The point of the matter is that he still received those gifts while making the lives of everyone else miserable. The economy is in a horrible condition and we need to pay more taxes, but Starmer has his snout in the Lord Ali trough.
I think the issue that people have with this is the utter hypocrisy of the Labour Party. The fact that they were standing pontificating on high about integrity and everyone was saying Keir Starmer's a man of integrity. Well, he's a very rich man. He's got his own statutory instrument for his pension. He doesn't need the money. He could spend his own money and people are suffering and he's taking freebies. It's just, and it's not just him, it's literally the entire front bench of the Labour Party. They're all at it.
Starmer's approval ratings are in the gutter. Nana has exposed and utterly humiliated him, and there's no way he can keep avoiding this. Turns out, people do not like hypocrisy. Who would have thought, Sir Keir? The idea that Starmer is a man of integrity has long been proven false now.
The question of my monologue is that what are you getting in return for this? And there has to be some kickback somewhere, even if it's softening the person up for something. Or why would you give somebody a gift without needing to give them a gift? There's got to be, and also, won't it affect that person's ability to be completely objective when making a decision about something that you're involved in?
Lord Ali or any other generous elite who sends Starmer gifts isn't stupid. They know what they're doing and their goal is to soften Starmer up and influence him. In the end, they'll have an easier time in making him do what they want. It's impossible for Starmer to be objective and honest under those conditions, and that's unacceptable.
They promised not to raise taxes on working people. Only no one appears to be able to define just what that actually means. What is a working person?
What is a working person?
Well, a working person...
Simon Cowell?
Well, a working person is someone who works their living...
I've got that.
And uses our public services. The person I have in mind...
Simon Cowell.
While Starmer continues to receive expensive gifts, he's breaking all his promises. He promised not to raise taxes on working class people, but can't even define what that is. There's a very specific reason for that, and it's not as smart as Starmer thought it was.
See, that's the thing, isn't it? It doesn't... I think Keir Starmer will regret trying to create a definition for working person so that he can... A lot of people, very quickly, I'll finish with this then. A lot of people think that they're just trying to change the definition so they can raise taxes on people who they've felt don't fall in that definition under their definition of it.
Starmer is trying to keep the definitions loose so that he can classify people however he pleases. If he gets to decide what a working person is, then he gets to increase whatever taxes he wants. Too bad for you if Sir Keir doesn't deem you fit to be a working person. He certainly didn't think so about the pensioners or farmers. Labour's finding out a very harsh truth and they don't seem to be able to accept it.
The Labour Party are quite quickly finding out that the guff that they spouted in opposition, which went largely unchallenged by many in the established media, doesn't work when you're in power. Now, whilst GB News has challenged narratives from all parties throughout, Sir Keir Starmer, in my view, was given the green light by most of the other broadcasters.
It's easy to spout righteous nonsense when you're in the opposition and insult everyone else. However, now that they're in the government, they're finding out that their empty words hold much less meaning. Starmer had been hiding this secret that he loves to be spoiled by the liberal elites in the form of expensive gifts. Thankfully, like Nana wiped the floor with, and the truth is right in front of us now. What we decide to do with it now depends on us. Just like Nana exposed Starmer, you can do the same so that more people are aware of this hypocrisy. That's something you can help in liking this video and subscribing to the channel.